How good can this Tennessee Titans secondary be under new defensive coordinator Dennard Wilson? We're going to take a look at Dennard Wilson's history as a secondary coach and defensive pass game coordinator, as well as the obvious players on the Titans roster, and then sort of compare that to the rest of the NFL to find out how good can this Titans secondary be. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And Justin, it's been a while. I think the people were maybe expecting an episode last week because I said on the last one, which was over a week ago now, I said later this week we're going to get to this, and it's just like life's been really busy for both of us. But how is it going, my friend?
Well, hold on. You said it's over a week. Give us some credit. Oh, yeah, it's been 7 days, I think, since the last one. So I know we're recording this. So been about 7 or 8 days. That's a long time for us. So we apologize to the listeners, the viewers. But it is a slow time of year. I had a week off. You did a solo pod. You knocked it out of the park, by the way.
Thank you.
It's been watched by a ton of people. In fact, there's one guy I want to call out. One commenter. I don't remember his name.
I know
think you know exactly where I'm going with this. And I'm pissed off. I wish I wrote down his name so I can call him out. Maybe you'll look it up. The guy commented on the YouTube video. We really appreciate your comment, by the way. Graver does. I don't as much, even though I do. He left a comment saying, I love you guys as a duo, but that solo pod just hits different.
It was at Only Loyalty Matters, and if you're watching on YouTube now, you see that on the screen.
What a cliche name, because there's no loyalty he's showing to Justin Melo here, a co-host of the Music City. What loyalty? What loyalty? He's only loyal to Justin Graver. I was ticked about it, man. I was like, wow. And you know what? All kidding aside, you killed it. You did a great job. But I could never imagine doing a solo pod like every day, every other day. I can't. Like, did you be honest and feel free? Did you enjoy it? Like, did you really? I can't imagine doing solo all the time. I couldn't imagine. I wouldn't do it.
I agree. I mean, it was nice not to be interrupted or cut off as I was making a point every time. Just giving you shit. No, it was fine. It was fine. It sucked because I had to like know everything. Usually I can like halfway know stuff and then just toss it to you and then you'll fill in the gaps. But so I guess it was good for me to be fully educated. But yeah, look, I don't know if you guys watching or listening, we appreciate everyone who downloads this as an audio podcast. Of course, we really appreciate the listeners, but we appreciate even more the YouTube followers. And continue to comment on the videos because we like to engage with you guys. We like to get in there and respond. And we even like to base entire episodes of the show off of our YouTube comments. Because today's episode, diving into how good can the secondary be, or as Spencer Smith 9367 put it, where the secondary might rank. Because he said, I can't fathom actually having an elite secondary, but with the dudes we have, it could be real this year. I agree, Spencer Smith. The Titans could have an elite secondary this year, and that's what we're diving into on this podcast. So we just want to encourage everyone again, continue commenting on the video. It's the best way to help us grow this channel. If you have friends who are Titans fans and you listen to this, send them the video. Send them what we're doing here so that you can talk to your friends about, oh, did you hear what Justin and Justin said? Do you agree? Are those two guys idiots or what? Or maybe that's not what you'll say, but what, Justin?
No, I was going to say 40 comments on the last video. I think that's the most we've ever had, maybe, or it's up there. So it's up there. It's certainly up there. So as much as Graver's been talking to you guys, asking for the comments, you are coming through. We're very, very pleased with what you guys are doing. 40 comments on the last video. That's outstanding. If this one surpasses it, we'd be blown away. We'd be thrilled. But 40 comments, man. Appreciate all of you. Except the loyal Titans guy. I didn't like his comment, but the other 39 were great.
And shout out to all our international listeners. I didn't realize our show had such a big global profile, but we got guys, Canada's basically, you're in the continent at least. I'm talking about across the pond. We got people listening from England, from Germany, just shouting out where they're from in the comments. I love that, actually. So if you are not a U.S. or Canadian listener, tell us where you're from. I love seeing how big the show is growing.
And I will respond in your language. I will find a way to respond. We had a Brazilian guy, comment recently. And I don't know if you know this, but Brazilians, they speak Portuguese, and I'm Portuguese. So I didn't have to go look that up. I just responded to him. It was thank you in Portuguese, and everyone probably knows. But the point is, I I think there was a German guy commented.
Yeah.
I talked about the Euro Cup with him, which
Yeah.
is going on right now. Like, we're having a blast. I know a lot about soccer. So all you Europeans, you want to comment out there, let's talk some footy. Let's do it.
And Germany with the 5-1 biggest win of the Euro so far. I know what's going on in soccer. All right, let's get into this episode. And before I do, I want to tell everyone this episode is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Sinkers Beverages is the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. So from birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. And if you head to sinkersbeverages.com or you check the link in this podcast description, you can join the In Crowd. In Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. And again, shout out to all of our YouTube listeners and our YouTube watchers. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the Music City Audible channel, give this video a thumbs up, like, and turn on alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. Because when we accidentally take a week off like we just did, you're not going to know when the next one's coming. You get those alerts on, bang, you know, Music City Audible new video has dropped. You can go check it out. All right, Justin, enough banter. We are 8 minutes into the episode, and we have not talked about cornerbacks or secondaries yet, so let's do that. And we're going to start off this discussion. I'm going to let Dennard Wilson start this off for us with a quote from the last press conference. Last time he spoke to the media, he talked about how these corners are going to play, especially when it comes to press coverage. Take a listen.
For me, I believe press or less. Like, I want them to line up, and I want them to be in front of receivers and challenge the receivers. Ultimately, in this game, if you get free access, it's easy for the quarterbacks to complete balls. So what I do is I want to create hesitation at the line of scrimmage and make them earn it the hard way. Make them earn it, throw the 50-50 ball, but everything else we're going to challenge.
How do you approach that? Do you leave it open to them to do it, or it's you telling them?
From day one, we press everything. Period.
Now, I hit on this a little bit when I was doing updates from, what we learned about from Titans mandatory minicamp. So I did talk about this in the last pod if you missed it. But man, is it refreshing to know that the Titans cornerbacks are going to be physical and aggressive and try to disrupt these routes at the line of scrimmage, as opposed to whatever the heck we saw under the last multiple regimes where they said it was basically up to the cornerback to decide if he wanted to press or play off or how he wanted to attack the receiver. And how many times did Titans fans complain about, it's 3rd and 10 and our corners are playing 20 yards off the line of scrimmage, or it's 3rd and 4 and they're playing 10 yards off the line. It's like, get up there and jam a guy. Well, now the Titans are going to do that. So before we dive into Dennard Wilson's history, just your thoughts on how that could change everything for this pass defense.
Well, I think the most important thing is personnel, to be honest with you. Now, I don't doubt that maybe that was a point of emphasis for the Mike Vrabel, Shane Bowen defense. Maybe they didn't believe in that. I can't say with certainty, but maybe they didn't. I know when Dick LeBeau was here, for example, I'm going way back, but the personnel was so bad. If I recall correctly, it wouldn't shock me if they felt they couldn't press, even if they wanted to, right? Like they had guys out there that didn't belong out there. The Mike Vrabel, Shane Bowen defense, when they had the Malcolm Butlers, the Adoree Jacksons, the Logan Ryans, personnel was pretty good. This past year, I didn't like it, okay? Christian Fulton, Sean Murphy, Bunting, clear upgrades with L'Jarius Sneed and Cheeto Awuzie coming in. The key for me, when you ask me that question, the point is, now you've got guys that can press, in my opinion. So if you want to play that style, you marry the scheme to the skill set, right? That's when a beautiful marriage happens, right? You don't need counseling. You don't need none of that BS. That's when it's going the way it's supposed to go, right? A guy like L'Jarius Sneed, one of the premier press corners in the league. We know that. A guy like Roger McCreary, short-armed, but super scrappy, super competitive, wants to get in your face, never backs down from a challenge, right? And I think Cheeto Awuzie on the other side is a good fit for that as well. So marrying personnel to scheme, I think that was a big thing that Rand Carthon wanted to achieve this offseason, and he did that by giving Dennard Wilson the type of corners that he wants to play in his defense.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because PFF released basically a new metric, at least a metric I had never heard of before, so maybe it's been around, but I think it's a new metric today, Monday, called physicality rating percent. Wait, what is it called? It's called physicality rate. It's a new metric that PFF has come out with called physicality rate, which basically measures how what percentage of times or how often a cornerback is getting physical and pressing a wide receiver. And this just came out. They released the top 10 most physical cornerbacks on Monday. L'Jarius Sneed, number 4, with a physicality rate of 33.0%. Now, in my mind, and look, I'm going to throw a lot of PFF numbers at you guys today. We can just get this disclaimer out of the way right off the bat. PFF, grain of salt. We know the whole deal with PFF. It's still a good way to get a snapshot of performance, right? So yeah. Sometimes
it's a good snapshot of performance. Other times they rank Aaron Brewer ahead of Lloyd Cushenberry in their positional rankings.
Even though like the description of each guy like doesn't match that. When they did free agent centers,
yes,
Lloyd Cushenberry was well above Aaron Brewer.
And I mean, apples and like 1+1's too, right? One of them got 4 years, $50 million. The other got 321 in free agency. So
definitely a market-based thing. I saw your Titan-sized article on that today. So check out Titan-sized, new editor, Justin Melo. Okay, anyway, so physicality rate. What is physicality rate? Like, let's be real. Physicality rate, is that a real metric that we're going to use now? But regardless, L'Jarius Sneed been one of the most physical corners in the NFL, whether you use PFF's physicality rate or not. Like, it's just a fact. He is always in the guy's grill. So never played under Dennard Wilson, but clear stylistic meshing there. And I think that you're going to see the same thing from Chido Awuzie, from Roger McCreary. Heck, if Trey Avery or Eric Garror or Jarvis Brownlee Jr., if those guys have to play snaps at some point in the year, you're going to see it from them too. It's not just going to be the top 3 guys because they're physical. Like Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in college was the same kind of guy. Trey Avery, Eric Garror, I mean, we've seen some physicality from those guys too, even if they weren't necessarily coached to be. Eric Garror especially, I mean, he was coming up making brutal, like hardcore tackles in the preseason and stuff. Now, granted, that's different from jamming a receiver, but you can tell he's got that physicality in him. So I think as far as players and coaches go, like what the defensive coordinator wants to do and the personnel that he has to execute that vision, perfect match. So great job team building on that side of things. And while we're talking about Dennard Wilson, I do want to talk about his history. So if you guys listened to the How Good Can Titans Offensive Line Be episode where we did our deep dive on Bill Callahan's history, we looked at his previous stops and how good the offensive line was under Bill Callahan. There is a caveat here. We're going to try to do something similar, but we have to acknowledge that Dennard Wilson was never a defensive coordinator. If you're looking specifically at offensive line and offensive line rankings with the greatest offensive line coach of all time, I think there's a clearer path of correlation there. Whereas with Dennard Wilson, it's like he wasn't the defensive coordinator. He did have a role as a defensive pass game coordinator in some stops, but not every time. Like 2021, he was with Philadelphia. He was just the defensive backs coach. 2022, still with Philadelphia, he was promoted to defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach. But he's never been the defensive coordinator. And we've seen a lot of people, when Dennard Wilson was hired, it's like, oh, Patrick Queen would be a great fit with the Titans because he played for Dennard Wilson. It's like, you guys know Dennard Wilson wasn't the defensive coordinator in Baltimore, right? Like, does everyone know that? Like, just want to make sure that we are putting that caveat out there. It's not exactly the same as looking at offensive line rankings with the offensive line coach. But still, what I'm going to look at here is PFF coverage grade ranking under Dennard Wilson for his last 3 years, last 4 years, last 3 stops specifically. So here it is. 2023, Baltimore Ravens. He was the defensive backs coach. He was not the defensive coordinator or the defensive pass game coordinator, just the defensive backs coach. Baltimore finished with the second best coverage grade as a defense that season, 93.0, according to PFF's grade. 93.0. That is very, very high. Baltimore also finished with the number 2 overall defense by PFF grade at 89.8. Now, granted, Dennard Wilson was not the defensive coordinator, so that doesn't necessarily mean a lot, but they were a very, very good defense. They had very good personnel, and they were very well coached and well coordinated, and that's how you end up as the number 2 coverage graded team in PFF. The season before that, 2022, he was with Philadelphia. He was the defensive pass game coordinator that year and the defensive backs coach. Philadelphia finished 5th overall in coverage grade ranking by PFF with a coverage grade of 89.1. Remember, 90 is elite. Anything above 70 is good. But you're creeping up towards 90 and over 90, you are elite. So Philadelphia in 2022, 5th overall. In 2021 with Philadelphia, before he was the pass game coordinator, he was just the defensive backs coach. Philadelphia was 13th with a coverage grade of 69.8. So remember what I just said. Anything above 70 typically is considered good. Just about 70. But it gets worse the further back in time we go from there. If you go to 2020, he was with the New York Jets. as the defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach for 2 years, 2019 to 2020. Those 2 years we may want to throw out of this sample because they are not good. 2020 with the New York Jets, they were 30th out of 32 in coverage grade, 33.3 grade. That is about as bad as it gets. That is extraordinarily bad. I am shocked that there were 2 teams with a lower coverage grade than that. And if you go back all the way to 2019, his first year with New York, his first year as the defensive pass game coordinator in New York, he was in New York before that just as the defensive backs coach for 2 seasons. Then 2019 promoted defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach. In that season, they ranked 15th in coverage grade with a pretty good grade of 72.2, so a better overall year for the entire NFL in terms of coverage grade. But the point is, he's been with New York, the personnel was obviously different than what it was with Philadelphia, than what it was in Baltimore. But through 3 different stops over 5 years, he's been top 15 4 out of 5 times. He's been top 5 twice. So that's a pretty good track record. And if you look at the personnel like in New York versus Philadelphia versus Baltimore, where Baltimore's second best, Philadelphia 5th best, New York 15th best, obviously we know the personnel in Baltimore is a little bit better than the personnel in Philly during those 2 years, which they still had very good corners in Philly those 2 years, but getting up there in age, and then the secondary kind of fell off last year after Dennard Wilson left, which is also interesting to note. Zach Lyons wrote about that after the hire was announced, that Dennard Wilson, every time he's left a team, their defensive, like the passing stats they allow and everything, their coverage takes a major nosedive. So that's another element to this.
I'm pissed you said that because you've been talking for so long.
Sorry.
It was the one point I wanted to make. No, I'm kidding, because 2 things I wanted to point out about 2022. You didn't take all of it. You took one of it. That was his final year in Philly. Best secondary in the league, in the 179.8 passing yards allowed per game. Literally the best ranked secondary in the league in passing yards per game metric. How about we flip it around? The Ravens that year, he's not there, obviously, in 2022, right? And now look, the D coordinator there that just got the head coaching job in Seattle probably deserves a ton of credit, more credit, potentially. But just something to point out, he's not there in Baltimore that year because he's in Philly. And where the Ravens ranked 8th most passing yards allowed per game at 232.2, right? And then you go to this past year, as I just said, he's not in Philly anymore. They go from number 1 to 31, almost unheard of. 252.7 passing yards per game this past season. And how about the Ravens? They go from 8th worst to middle of the pack, essentially, this past season, right? They were quite good. So sorry, middle. I got it up here now officially. 6th best.
Yeah.
191.9. So drastic change for the Ravens and for the Eagles. Both of them reflecting positively, I would say, right, on Dennard Wilson. Well, how about the Titans last year? One of the worst in the league, right? So why can't they be one of the best this year? We saw it happen to Baltimore. We saw the opposite happen to Philly. We hope what happened to Baltimore happens to the Titans this year with Dennard Wilson.
Exactly. And yeah, so you mentioned it. The 6th fewest yards per game allowed, 2nd best coverage grade by PFF in Baltimore last year. And, you talk about the caveats and everything and like how good can the Titans secondary be. Dennard Wilson has never been a defensive coordinator before. He's been a defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach. So we are projecting a little bit here because we don't exactly know what his scheme is going to look like, but we do know, what the clip I played earlier, he's going to, these guys are going to press. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to try to force turnovers as much as possible. So I think that we're going to see that. Now let's talk about, so that's the coach. Coach A+ hire in terms of what you hope he can be. If you're going to hire someone who's never been a defensive coordinator before, this is the type of guy you hire because he's shown that he can do it at that level right below defensive coordinator as a defensive pass game coordinator, which is half the job. So we're projecting a little bit there. But then you talk about the players that he added. Legere, yeah.
You give me 1 second. I'm
Absolutely.
sorry. I'm putting my hand up instead of interrupting. Because you talked about the secondary, him being a secondary coach, and you talked about him being a first-year defensive coordinator. I do think it's worth me putting my hand up to say he's got some good support in that room, right? They held on to Chris Harris as a passing game coordinator / cornerbacks coach. We all think very highly of Chris Harris, or, we have, and we still should, even though last year didn't go to plan because of personnel, in my opinion. And then they bring in Steve Jackson as a secondary coach, right? What is it, his 2nd or 3rd stint with the team, or 3rd if you count playing, because he played for the franchise for a long time. and then coached in 2016, 2017. Went on with the Jets, by the way, with Dennard Wilson for a bit. Then was in Cincinnati with Brian Callahan. Was recently in Atlanta, did a really good job in Atlanta this year with Arthur Smith and turning that defense around, AJ Terrell at corner. So, yes, he's a first-time DC. I share that concern and questions with you, but I really like that he's got Chris Harris and Steve Jackson in that room to serve in the roles that he once served in and was successful in.
Right, and I think that that's definitely important because, again, it's his first time. So to be around people who have seen it, who have done it before, obviously is a huge deal, and that's definitely something that's going to help him. But another thing that's going to help him is the players that the Titans acquired, because not only were I don't know how to feel now looking back necessarily, speaking about the Titans coaching staff that was here before. Like, everyone loved them at the time, but you look back and kind of wonder how much better things could have been. What? Maybe not.
I think people have gotten too carried away with how terrible they were. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just me.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is not only did they change and upgrade, maybe, hopefully, the coaching staff, the personnel has been vastly, vastly upgraded by bringing in...
No debate there.
Yeah, but bringing in L'Jarius Sneed and Chido Awuzie, you vastly improve the talent that the coaching staff has to work with. And like we mentioned, this is a perfect match between style of the coaching style and the play style. And just talking about these players, like, where do you think... let's project ourselves. Let's time travel to June 2025 really quick. Where are National Football people ranking the trio of L'Jarius Sneed, Chido Awuzie, Roger McCreary against the context of the larger NFL? Are they top 5? Are they top 10? Are they middle of the pack? Where do you think they end up?
I think you'd be disappointed if they're not top 10. Certainly, right? Maybe even a little higher. Like, you look at, teams like the Jets, I think of like the Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed duo is really good. In Miami, they're a little old. What do they got? Jalen Ramsey. And like, it just, I'd be disappointed, I think, if they're not top 10, right? I think that's how you've got to feel if you're talking about June 2025.
I agree with that. I think top 10 is probably the range of acceptable that you're okay with. And if it's worse than top 10, then you're probably not that okay with it. But I think they could be even higher than that. If we're talking about, look, I tried to sort this by coverage grade on PFF. And to be honest, it's all over the map. Like, L'Jarius Sneed, 41st highest coverage grade player. It's like, you're not going to tell me L'Jarius Sneed is the 41st best cornerback in the NFL when there's only 32 teams. So I'm not really using that stat. But a stat that I will use is passer rating allowed into their coverage. And L'Jarius Sneed last season ranked 6th in passer rating allowed into his coverage, just 66.0, one of the best in the league, obviously. It's hard to like top 2 positively about Chido Awuzie, because last year it was a very down year for him. It was 1 year removed from an ACL injury, which we've seen how players can come back from that. Roger McCreary, though, 32nd in the NFL in passer rating allowed last year, 87.3 passer rating allowed. So you got 2 guys who are in the top 32 of cornerbacks in terms of passer rating allowed. And then Chido Awuzie, who you hoped can get back to a previous form. So Chido Awuzie, tougher to evaluate because of that year coming off injury. So it's harder to say, I'm not going to use his passer rating allowed last year to try to say how good this Titan secondary can be. I do think there are weak points when we talk about the Titans secondary, and one of those is injury concerns, and we'll get to that in a little bit as we talk about depth. But before we do, to finish this conversation, look, you got 2 guys top 32 passer rating allowed. You got Chido Awuzie, who you expect to be a lot better in his second year removed from the ACL, and you got a defensive coordinator who has been a secondary coach and a defensive pass game coordinator of top 5 units. So you say top 10. There's no reason this group couldn't be top 5. There's no reason this group couldn't be the best in the NFL. I think the one thing right now that would stop them from being the best in the NFL is the glaring hole at safety. If they fill that glaring hole with Justin Simmons, who is a all-pro level safety, then you're talking sky's the limit for this defense. If that is Elijah Molden and a hodgepodge of other guys coming in and filling rotational spots, then you're probably closer to that top 10, right on the edge of top 10 status. Would you agree with that?
I do, and I want to get into that in a second. Like you said, when I look at cornerback rankings, though, you're right. Like, some of this is off the top of my head, I'll be honest. But in terms of teams that can match them, as you know, the New York Jets come to mind. Like I said, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. They were all really good last year. I'm going to throw an underrated one at you that I think is not getting enough hype. Other conference. We'll see them in week 1 though. The Chicago Bears. Okay, Jalen Johnson's one of the better ones in the league. Tyreek Stevenson was outstanding last year. I don't know if people realize how good Tyreek Stevenson was as a rookie. And then the nickel corner, Kyler Gordon, is pretty good as well. Then they got Jaquan Brisker at safety, and they added Kevin Byard. Say what you will about this 8 version of Kevin Byard, but if the other 4 guys are as good as they are and can be, then I think Byard will probably fit in just fine, right? And then the Jets, I only talked about corner, but the trio there with the Jets is outstanding as well. Yes, I think the one pushback, and I haven't pushed back, I said top 10 only because I like to leave a little wiggle room, to be honest. It's not because I don't think this room can be top 5. And it's not about me protecting myself or anything like that. It's just I know how hard it is to be top 5, right? If they're 7th or 8th, that's still great. Nothing wrong with that. You can win a Super Bowl if you're the 7th best secondary in the NFL. So that's why I say top 10. I fully believe they can be even higher than that. The one pushback, you kind of alluded to it quickly, is the depth, and it's the safety spot, right? I look at corner number 1. If any of those 3 guys get hurt, do you love what's coming in behind them? How ready is Jarvis Brownlee going to be? Do you really rate Eric, Garrard and Trey Avery that highly? I don't think most people do, right? And at safety, look, it's Elijah Molden, right? Starting opposite Amani Hooker right now. And you said it, a hodgepodge of other guys. No, let's say who they are, right? It's second-year UDFA special teams guy, Matthew Jackson. He's probably the 3rd best safety on the team right now. That's got to be Elijah Molden, right? Elijah Molden's got to be the 3rd best safety on the team. And it's Amani Hooker starting opposite him. We love Amani Hooker when he's healthy. Can you imagine they don't bring in someone and Hooker gets hurt? It's Elijah Molden and Mike Brown is on this team too, and Shaheem Carter. Both those guys have been on again, off. They've probably gone through 30 transactions with the Titans over the last 2 years. Right, I'm not even kidding. Right, practice squad cut, 53 cut, back to practice squad, and then they got a UDFA too out of Penn State, Keaton Ellis. That's who's on the roster right now. So it's imperative that Elijah Molden, that they make him the 3rd best safety on this roster and sort out what that room looks like.
That's a fair point. The pushback I'll give on that, or I guess the counter argument, the positive biased argument I will make to that point, is that last season in Baltimore, Marlon Humphrey, their starting cornerback, missed 7 games. Marcus Williams, their starting safety, missed 6 games. Geno Stone, the backup safety who played for Marcus Williams, largely an unknown. Brandon Stevens, do you know who that is right now?
I do, because of the NFL draft, but I'm nodding my head vigorously because if you think one of these guys is coming in,
well, that's not what I'm saying.
Stone,
that's not what I'm saying. But let me just, for anyone who doesn't know who Brandon Stevens is, because I had never heard of him before. Brandon Stevens is who filled in for Marlon Humphrey last year. He was a safety coming out, transitioned to boundary cornerback as a 3rd-year player last year, and logged 11 pass breakups, only allowed an 80.6 passer rating, only allowed 2 touchdowns. It's going to be him and Marlon Humphrey sharing the field together coming up. But the point is, 2 key players from their secondary missed a lot of time, 13 games combined. And Dennard Wilson had these backups, these depth pieces ready to come in and contribute without really missing a beat. And I know that's not the same thing, and every player is a different player, and the Titans' depth is who they are, and they're maybe not as good as the Ravens' depth. But the point is, we didn't know how good Geno Stone was before he had to play a bunch last year. We didn't know how good Brandon Stevens was. We didn't know who Brandon Stevens was until he had to play for Marlon Humphrey last year. So could you say the same thing about what if Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is actually fine as a rookie if he gets pressed into action? Yeah,
you know that. Biggest fan.
We're big fans of him.
Okay, but this secondary came into the season. I know they had injuries, like you said, but come on, that room had Kyle Williams. Who's the other safety? He's making $1 billion a year.
Kyle Hamilton.
Sorry, Kyle Hamilton. I think I combined their names. Who's the other one?
Marcus Williams.
Yes, you're talking about the guy. He's making $1 billion a year. He's an unbelievable player. They went into that year with Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, friggin' Geno Stone, Marlon Humphrey. I don't know. That is the biased point of view. I think the depth they went. I know. I'll give you the Stevens kid because he's as unknown as Matthew Jackson was or Eric Arrar is right now. But no, I don't see it the same way.
I agree.
Geno Stone was a good player coming out of Iowa. I thought, I don't see it.
I agree. Ultimately, like the Titans' depth is a concern, and these guys are a little bit older and definitely more injury prone. We know L'Jarius Sneed dealing with the knee. We talk about Chido coming off the ACL tear. And then the safety depth is what it is. But so will one of these guys get pressed in action? Will Trey Avery, Eric Garror, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., will they have to play significant snaps this year? His NFL history and the odds say they will have to play some level of significant snaps at some point this year, whether that's a 1-game stretch, a 3-game stretch, an 8-game stretch. Like those guys are going to be on the field a little bit just because that's the nature of the NFL. The injury rate is 100%. So that's going to happen at some point. And that is the biggest question mark as to whether this team can finish with a top 5 secondary, or if you want to look at it with PFF coverage grade, which is what I ranked Dennard Wilson's history using. If you want to look at it like, can they have a top 5 grade? For the most part, they got to stay healthy, or it's going to be a big question whether or not these backups, because you mentioned how important the personnel was to Dennard Wilson having success. Like the personnel absolutely matters, and you go out and pay all this money and for L'Jarius Sneed and for Chido Awuzie to come in here only for them to like get hurt or not play. Obviously, that's going to be a big thing that you're going to have to overcome. And I don't know that this Titans depth can overcome it. So ultimately, as we try to close out this episode, I think the Titans are going to have a really good secondary, but I think it is contingent on staying healthy. And so it's always risky to just project that they will be good. And I like that you went with top 10 to give yourself that little wiggle room that somebody misses 6 games or whatever happens. But I think with Dennard Wilson in here, with the experienced positional coaches around him that you mentioned, with the huge upgrade in talent that we've been talking through this whole time, like, this could be one of the best secondaries in the NFL. And if they get Justin Simmons again, or even Quandre Diggs, like bring in a veteran safety who knows what he's doing, then the sky's the limit for this secondary. And I'm really excited to finally like is this the return, Justin? Stop me if this is too cheesy or stupid. My man catch no balls 2.0.
Oh, dear Lord. I was never a big fan of that saying in general. It just sounded kind of cheesy. I thought when they came up with it.
Does not roll off the tongue well.
It does not. The MMNCB, was it like that rolls off the tongue?
MMNCB? Try to say that 5 times fast. It does not roll off the tongue at all.
MMNCB, 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 MMNCB 5 times in your face.
It's still
Graver.
Yeah,
No,
it still sounds.
It sounds
bad.
better than my man catch no balls. It just sounds terrible when you say the full thing. But I don't think I did a good enough job expressing my excitement for the secondary. I usually try to counterpoint you, and I go top 10, and I talk about safety, and I disagreed with you that the Ravens' depth, I think, was a lot better going into the year than the Titans was, and I stand by that. But I'm in love with this cornerback room, the top 3. It's outstanding. It rivals any top 3 in the NFL. I do think, bar none. Again, I said I love what's in Chicago. I love what the Jets got.
You didn't mention the Cowboys.
Right up there with those.
You didn't mention the Cowboys. The Cowboys are going to have a really good secondary again, especially if they're able to bring Stephon Gilmore back.
Yeah, Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland still there, so very good secondary.
The Niners have a very good secondary. Javarius Ward, Deommodore Lenoir.
When Hufunga's healthy.
Yeah, the Seahawks, after adding Devon Witherspoon last year and Tariq Woolen the year before that.
Standing.
Great secondary.
Kobe Bryant's there is in a depth role. Some really good secondary. And Mike McDonald's the head coach now, don't forget.
Yeah,
right?
so that's going to be a great defense. And then the last one I'll throw out there that I think the Titans are going to compare to is the Browns with Martin Emerson Jr., Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome. Like that's about what I expect from the Titans secondary, is around that level of play. I mean, in terms of like where each player is in their career and how like good we think of them right now, it's pretty similar to that Browns room, I think.
I think I'll put a bow on this episode quickly as we get out of here to summarize. In love with the cornerback room. Please stay healthy. Please make a move at safety.
Yes, please. We are dying to do an emergency pod. I've never said that before. More work. Yes, I want more work because I want to talk about Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs or somebody becoming a Tennessee Titan. So, that'll do it, right? Anything else? Any last words? Was that your last words? Should I thank the sponsor and the viewers and get out of here?
Thank the sponsor. Thank the viewer. I'll have 2 last words. My 53-man roster projection is now up. First one I've done, post minicamp, post OTAs, perfect time to do it. It's on Titan sized. As I mentioned, I am the new leader, whatever you want to call it, of that website. Number 2, I've got to give a shout out to Broadway, right? I'm too loyal. I don't know how to leave places. I've got an amazing interview right now. It's an exclusive with Jha'Quan Jackson, rookie receiver for the Titans. Thought he said some amazing things in that interview. Very interesting on his relationship with Tajay Spears. Dare I say something he said, I got to explain this, reminded me of Isaiah Wilson. I shouldn't say reminded me of Isaiah Wilson because that's going to make it sound bad. But I thought it was really interesting. He mentioned that when he first got to Tennessee, how thankful he was to have Tajay Spears in the city of Nashville. And he said to me, I couldn't imagine if I didn't have him here. And he went as far. I thought it was one of the most interesting things he said. I couldn't believe he said it, to be honest, but it was a good thing. It was honest. It was from the heart. He said, Tajay told me when he first got here last year, he went through moments of sadness because he was like, I don't know a single person here. And I thought of how difficult that must be for a young kid and how lucky Jha'Quan is. He said, I have no idea what that feels like. It's the little things. When I want to get away from football, I call Tajay and say, let's go play Topgolf. I call Tajay and say, let's go play laser tag.
Wow.
I thought that was so real. It was so from the heart. And they do that. And Tajay didn't have that person he could call when he got there last year. Okay. And I think of how important it is to have that support system. And I think of, it's crazy. I'm sorry, but maybe if Isaiah Wilson had someone to call and say, let's go play laser tag, who knows? Maybe it would have worked out differently. How important that is. I know maybe he's just an asshole. I don't know. I'm not saying, right? Maybe there's a serious mental health stigma there with it. I don't know, right? We're way past it. But the point is how important I think that is for a rookie to have someone. And most of them don't have anyone half the time. Right. But how Jha'Quan told me, I have no idea. I can't imagine if I didn't have Tajay here. Go read the entire interview. That's one very small quote in a very long interview that was very good. He was so the Titans, shout out to the Titans. They gave me his time. He was in the building when he called me. They were so generous. The Titans were with his time spent with me. And it was so awesome. Go read the interview. The reason I brought up the 53-man roster projection is because our next episode, so we think, I'm going to tease it, dueling 53-man roster projections, but not between me and Justin Graver. He's going to be here to host and stir the pot, as always.
I'll moderate.
He'll moderate. Between me and Mike Herndon. Mike Herndon's going to come on. He's got a 53-man roster out on paulkolarski.com. I've got a 53-man roster out on Titan Sized. I imagine we've got some differences. It's 53 guys. You're going to moderate. We'll go through position by position. Maybe he defends his selections, I defend my selections, and then, this is the real catch, if there's no clear-cut winner you agree with, me and Mike are going to fight to the death. And I don't like my chances. I've met Mike in real life. Fun fact, I've met Mike in real life. I've never met Graver in real life.
Wow.
Me and Mike have gone for beers in real life. He's actually, I don't know, like approximately 7'8".
No,
he's the tallest human being on the planet.
8'2".
Sorry, 8 foot. I was a little. He's okay. He is 8'2". All kidding aside, we don't need to exaggerate. He's like 6'9".
6'9". I'm 6'9", legitimately.
Is he 6'9"?
Yeah, that's the non-dumb answer. Yeah, legitimately 6'9".
I am 5'6". No word of a lie. I'm not gonna hide it. When me and Mike embraced, the cops thought he was abducting me. Like Nashville police came. Like it was a whole thing. I had to bail him out. Like if it wasn't for this beard. No, like he is so. We're not going to fight to the death. I wouldn't stand a chance. But we are going to defend our 53-man roster takes. Hopefully, it will not require a fight to the death.
Yeah, and if you do fight, it's going to have to be over Zoom anyway, so that'd be tough. But anyway, yes, we will link those 2 articles in this podcast description, so you guys can check it out. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to search for it. They'll be right here. And then when you brought that up, you said, I got to mention Broadway because I'm loyal. It made me want to ask you, who's more loyal, you or Only Loyalty Matters, the commenter who loves the duo, but
I hope he listens to this episode, and I hope he runs it back. I hope he says, you know what, that was so entertaining. I hope he goes back. Sorry, I hope he goes back on it. Is what I meant to say.
I hope he says,
was so entertaining.
I hope he says, I love the solo vids, but the duo hits different. You know, just complete inverse of his original comment.
You got to get back in my good graces. The only way he can do it is if he leaves that comment on this video. But looking forward to the next one. Me and Mike dueling 53-man roster projections. Perfect time of year for it. I love that we released our articles around the same time. Going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so look for that early next week. And if you turn on channel alerts, if you're subscribed to the channel, if you give this video a like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on channel alerts, you'll get a notification as soon as that video is out. So thanks to everyone for watching on YouTube. Thank you if you're listening on the podcast platform. We really appreciate the support. But what you should do is like at least open up YouTube and turn your sound off on your phone and then listen to the podcast on another device if you prefer to listen to it. Or maybe open up YouTube on your computer and listen on your phone. Whatever. I'll leave that to you to figure out. But just give us the double download. We really appreciate that. And thanks again to Sinkers Beverages. This episode is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. As I mentioned before, you can head to sinkersbeverages.com to join the in crowd and get exclusive access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. So that will do it. Sinkers Beverages also on Uber Eats. If you're too lazy or too busy to get out to the store, you can have all the booze you need delivered right to your front door. All right, until we are back with Mike Herndon, hopefully, y'all stay safe out there. We'll see you then. Tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.